So we know has multiple mitzvot, like we mentioned in the first shiur. How much did we say? Do you remember? 53, that's correct. 53 mitzvot in the entire Parsha. Please see the entire Parsha. Fill up your time. We don't know exactly tomorrow, as a result of the snowstorm that's coming, how many of our Rebbes will be able to arrive tomorrow morning, including yours truly, or sincerely, yours sincerely. So you have a lot of, if in the event that we don't have some shiurim, you're going to have other time to go into the warm Beit Midrash tomorrow morning, whatever. I don't foresee more than Rabbi Rothman arriving without boots or with boots. He says, I'm coming. He lives only a few minutes away, but Rabbi Weinberg and myself who live north and south of Yerushalayim, there's a doubt because we're expecting about 20 centimeters at least. Here, right now, in the Hermon is about a meter and a half of snow.
Snow?
Yes, in the Hermon. It's the highest place in the country. And it's right now in the upper, it's now in the upper Galilee.
But it's like, there's not even a cloud in the sky.
God, I spoke with God before the other time. He just, it hit Turkey and Greece very hard. And it's coming south, as you know. Let's get to our Parsha. Yes?
We could also try Zoom tomorrow.
I'll be more than happy. Gentlemen, our Parsha, like we said, is extraordinarily rich. As Nechama Leibovitz puts it in her opening article to the subject I want to share with you, there are a lot of themes. There's a multiple matter of Mishpatim, laws. Chukim, statutes that we have very little understanding. We talked about the primary damagers. Every part or facet of human existence, you're going to find a mitzvah in the Torah here. We talked about relations between man and society, damaging payments, members of the same community, between peoples. You'll see other mitzvot here between man and the enemies of Israel, man and the plant and the animals. We also see mitzvot regarding Shabbat and Yom Tov in the Parsha, and mitzvot that are just between God and our Maker, our Creator. One subject that deserves our attention, amongst other subjects, is the section called the Ger. Here, in Perek Kaf Bet, chapter 22, in verses 20 and 21, we see a collection of mitzvot that basically the Torah is saying, be sensitive to those that are weak in our society of the Jewish people. One obvious one is a ger. He doesn't have backing. He doesn't have family. He's in a new culture, a new language, a new way of life. So too, in Pasuk Kaf Bet 22, Kol Almana V'yatom Lo Ta'anun, regarding a widow, regarding an orphan. The truth is, it's regarding any person that you're not to not treat them properly, reject them from society, do not afflict them in any way. It's true for anyone, but these are the people that are usually the weak in society. Before we get a question, the Torah says, V'ger, it says two things. Lo toneh velo tilchatzenu. Maybe, is your question regarding this?
I don't know. Because I don't know what it means.
What?
My question, is there a connection to Mizmor 146?
Which states what?
In the end of this Mizmor, we talk about the strangers and the widows?
Absolutely, sure. The theme, the underlying theme here is quite clear. We sometimes, let's say I didn't get along with the guy in back of Thomas. I didn't get along with him. And I know he's weak. Maybe he's weak intellectually. Maybe he's weak physically. Maybe he's weak culturally. And you know what? Maybe I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. That's right. However, comes the Torah and says, V'ger lo toneh velo tilchatzenu. Let us understand. Lehonot is to hurt someone's feelings. Not physically, but of course, feelings. That's what lehonot is referring to. V'lo tilchatzenu, from the word lachatz, lilchot. Don't pressure him. We'll ask ourselves, are these two prohibitions or are they one prohibition? We'll see in a moment. One second, I want to say some things and perhaps thereafter we'll be able to answer your questions. I want you to first and foremost understand the Gemara in Masechet Bava Metzia explains to us, do you know how many times the Torah warns us in our behavior towards a ger? A ger is a stranger, a new member to the Jewish people. No less than 36 times does the Torah warn us regarding the ger. There's no other mitzvah. Do you hear me? There's no other mitzvah in the Torah that's like that. I know the important mitzvot to love Hashem and keep Shabbat and Brit Milah and don't eat unkosher food and uttering falsehood, theft. But nothing is like that you must treat the ger in such a way. So here we have in Pasuk 20, it seems to be two prohibitions, and that's apparently how Rashi understood it. Look and cite Rashi in Pasuk 20. V'ger lo toneh. Rashi says, we're talking here about onaat dvarim, hurting him with dvarim, with dibur, insulting him, saying things that are not right. Hey you, with the kippah, you're telling me what to do. A few months ago, you were in church every Sunday morning bowing down to that you-know-what, and you're going to tell me what to do? What did I just do? I just insulted him.
You did Lashon Hara.
I just, right now, in words, gentlemen, okay, in words, what I did was, I verbally oppressed him. Okay? I verbally oppressed him. And here, the Torah is telling us, have sensitivity, have self-control. And one of the reasons is because he's a newcomer. And he's not here for generations like you are, from your father and grandfather and great-grandparents, and your neshama Yehudit is used to the proper midot and so on and so forth. Rather, you have to know that you have to be gentle, sensitive to this person. As the Talmud says the following, okay? The Talmud says, if a ger comes to study Torah, and you should be accepting him, for whatever reasons we're not going to discuss right now, you're not going to tell him, you used to eat unkosher food, nivelot and treifot, shrimp and all these creepy crawlers and all that stuff. From your mouth, you're going to learn Torah. Okay? Don't you know the Torah is given from the mouth of the Almighty? So here we see that we can't shame him. We cannot mentally hurt him. We have to be careful of insulting allusions. And maybe that's the reason why the Torah tells us the reasoning behind this. The reasoning behind this. It says, V'ger lo toneh, that is hurting his feelings. V'lo tilchatzenu. How did Rashi explain V'lo tilchatzenu? How did Rashi explain V'lo tilchatzenu? Monetarily. Don't take advantage of him because he's weak in halakha and this or that. Okay? We know there's a prohibition of stealing, lo tignov, in Vayikra 19. But here we're talking about extra sensitivity to him. Don't take advantage of him monetarily. And here we see that at the end of the pasuk, something unusual, ki. Ki, of course, means? Does the Torah often tell us mitzvot because? Yes or no? Do you know it? Or, no, to your experience, it doesn't. And here we see ki. In other words, you were, let's read it, ki gerim heyitem, singular or plural.
Plural.
You, the nation of Israel, you yourselves were like strangers in the land of Mitzrayim. Furthermore, when we skip into chapter 23, verse 9, we see there that the Torah again warns us and says, V'ger lo tilchatz, do not oppress a ger. By the way, we're explaining ger here, meaning a ger tzedek, someone that joined the Jewish people. Ibn Ezra leaves it open, any stranger. Even a stranger that's not Jewish, that has accepted not to serve idolatry, he's living in your land as a non-Jew. There's a concept called a noachide, a ger toshav. We've heard of the concept in Hebrew, ger toshav. You've heard of it or not? There's a concept in Hebrew called ger toshav, a stranger who's a settler living in the land, namely a non-Jew that is committed not to do idolatry, has accepted the 7 Noachite laws. That's a ger toshav. That's how Ibn Ezra explains even this pasuk. But let's get to the second, another chapter. V'ger lo tilchatz. Don't oppress the ger. Why? V'atem yeda'atem. Right? Yeda'atem, you know, et nefesh. You with me, Yaakov? Et yeda'atem et nefesh hager. Remember, you were strangers like him, and you know what the nefesh of a ger is like. There are some commentators that don't make any extra move of explaining something here. You should know the feelings of a stranger. But you know what? If the Rishonim did not make any special comment regarding the second prohibition, our Chachamim, or sages, they see the change or the variance in the style. In the first reasoning, it says, you were Gerim. You were Gerim in Mitzrayim. In the second prohibition, in chapter 23, the Torah says something a little different, doesn't it? Yeda'atem. What is Ladat? You know the nefesh of the ger. You know the feelings of a stranger. Rashi quoted Chazal there in the second prohibition. And Rashi says, if you wrong him, you know what he might come and say to you? You also come from strangers. Okay? A blemish that you have, don't point a finger at someone else and say the same thing. You also have that you come from the same blemish. You're also from Gerim. Okay? So here in the second passage in 23:9, the prohibition against hurting, oppressing a ger is motivated by a historical memory that we have. Our historical memory. Someone said that, yeah, you're the one over there, you say it every day. Is it true? Do you really say every day that we came from Mitzrayim? That we were in bondage, we were strangers in another land, we recall the Exodus in the Shema, in the Tfilot, and so on and so forth? So, do you remember what Hashem said regarding lachatz, oppression? When God meets up with Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says the time has come to redeem you, Hashem says to Moshe, V'gam ra'iti et halachatz. I've seen also the oppression, shamitzrayim lochatzim otam, that the Egyptians are oppressing them. The word lachatz, that some of you know, which means pressure, it doesn't recur in our text, only dealing with the ger. The prohibition of oppressing the stranger, therefore, we can now say, is linked by the verbal association with the oppression that we suffered. Something that we suffered, don't do it to someone else. Do you understand what God's wisdom here is here? Am Yisrael suffered oppression from the Egyptians. We now, at Sinai, are prohibited by God we have to put ourselves in the same position of the ger, the stranger. Let's recall, how did we feel when we were pressured, when we were oppressed by the Mitzrayim? What? Batata. You've heard of that expression in Hebrew? How do you feel, batata? I don't know why. Of course, batata, sweet potato. Some of your Hebrew is very good. Why people say it's terrible? I like sweet potato. I don't know why. Is that the reason? So, my dear friends, here we're learning about a prohibition of how we should treat with sensitivity the ger, and God tells us that the memory of bondage, the memory of our exile, is acting as a protective shield. Don't impulsively start whacking away at a ger because you see something which is not right. Don't let your evil impulsives of you want to be a lord, you want to have dominion over the ger, no. Sometimes we have a temptation to exploit the weaker. Sometimes we have a temptation to oppress those that are not self-supporting or respectable citizens here. Okay? We have to treat the weak with special sensitivity. And this is what the Torah is telling us. Number one, you are gerim, and number two, you remember what the nefesh of a ger is. Remember how you were oppressed. Remember how you were taken advantage of this. Questions until now? Yes?
So, this could also apply to someone who's Balchuva.
Absolutely. A newcomer is like a stranger also. We could say a newcomer has to be very careful and sensitive. He's a newcomer. A week ago, he was eating shrimp and eating bacon on bagels with lettuce and tomato, and he wasn't involved. Okay, so we have to be extra sensitive. Yes, Yaakov?
Apologies for the slightly off-topic question this time, but what would you say to people who, let's just, for lack of a better word, like appropriate or misinterpret or like nefariously use this verse, or I guess you can say others, but specifically this one, in like a socio-political context, saying like, oh, because the God commands you to do this, therefore Israel should do that type of thing.
I don't clearly understand what you're getting at.
Like for example, like very often people use this verse to like say that, oh, Israel's mistreating a certain demographic here or there, and that.
Okay. So we know our truth. We know our truth. We know for 2,000 years. We know for 2,000 years we were oppressed. We were mutilated. We were hated, despised, with blood libels and such terrible actions by the Christians and Islams. We're coming home. We don't have to extra treat anyone that wants to destroy us. We have to know who wants to destroy us. We have to know who our enemies are. Okay? We have to know. If someone wants to live here, fine, but he has to respect the sovereignty, the dominion of the Jewish people as a state ruling over itself. If not, they can go to any other country in the world. We don't have to be extra nice to people that hate us whatsoever. We have to know who are our friends and who are our enemies. Yes, David?
To what the motion said before was the Rosh comment says also the term ger always denotes one who was not born in the country but came from another country. It also refers to
so right, Olim Chadashim, very nice relationship, correlation. Okay. Thank you. By the way, remember the novelty of our life, the newness of our life. Every day is like a new day. And we can always grow and always start anew again all the time. It's the beauty and dynamics of Torah Judaism. And therefore, I often answer people when they ask me, how long are you here? I said, I'm an Oleh Chadash. Really? How long? I'm only here 42 years. That's all I'm here. And I feel it's great. It's dynamic. It's like new.
Well, do you still remember the actual day? You said it was 1970 or 71.
No, 80.
Or it was 80?
Yes.
40. Sorry.
I remember my first day.
52 years.
I'm here 42 years.
Okay. It was. Do you remember the exact day in 1980 that it was?
I arrived on the 3rd of Elul, which happens to be the passing away date of Rabbi Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Cook. And I went into my first shiur, of the lights of penitence of Rav Bigon that day. And it opened my eyes. And I said, wow, they never taught me this in New York. It was an eye-opener. And more stories I'll tell you as time goes on. Ravid, you had a question?
No, I don't have a question, but I just want to mention when we read this, it's not so hard to understand and to remember all these things, but it's much more harder to act like this.
That's right.
And I'm just thinking, we have our tzitziot, we carry it, we do this every morning, we put it on, but I think we need to be much more aware about the meaning of that, to touch them and to remember this kind of thing.
Excellent. That's exactly what we're doing. Happy you're sharing that with us. Gentlemen, I want to go on to the next matter. Kaf Bet, Pasuk Lamed. Pasuk Lamed. After, by the way, in verse 24, Im Kesef Talve et Ami. Well, actually, I want to make a point here. Everyone look at 24 and only look in the Hebrew. The mitzvah of lending money. Yes, a Torah mitzvah, verse Kaf Dalet, verse 24. Do you see it? Of chapter 22. Im Kesef Talve et Ami. Look, the word im, some of you are so advanced in Hebrew that you even know what the word im means with an aleph.
Yes.
Im.
Imi.
No, look at yourself. Im, with an aleph. If.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
we said the Torah is a guide, is a code. God doesn't use the word im all the time like you use it. Im does not mean if you want to lend money, but im means when you do the mitzvah of lending money. It's not a reshut. It's not, yes, you want, you don't want. No, there's a Torah mitzvah to lend money. And who do you lend money to? Et ami, the people that's closest to you. The people could be your child. It could be your neighbor, someone in your town. We learn the level of closeness, who comes first. But yes, our philosophy of financial assets is that God channels these assets to us. And just like He channels to us, we also should channel to others and not keep it to ourselves, but to be klali, to be part of the group, the kihila, the nation, and be giving. We want to copy the attributes of Hashem. And just like He is giving, so too we're giving. And here, the Torah tells us the restraints. You're not a bank. You're not an investor. You're not lending money in order to make money on the deal. You're lending money without any interest. As it says here, yes, you can take collateral. Okay, look how careful the Torah is in verse 25. You can take a collateral as security. However, if this collateral, for instance, is a garment, and let's say it's the guy's pajamas, give it back to him by the end of the day so he can wear his pajamas at night. Okay? So, very important, these social mitzvot of lending money. Of course, everyone according to their ability. How much, to whom you're lending. It's good to entrust and write a note with 2 witnesses and obligate him until this date if he can, and so on and so forth. Mr. Resnick.
I'm not sure if this is in your Humash, this is a relevant question, but after the word kesef, there's like a little line for me.
That's right, and that's a break. It's a cantillation sign that gives us a break.
Okay.
A break. It's, in other words, a short pause. It's a mafsik. It stops the sentence. Im kesef, talveh tami.
Okay, it's like a comma basically.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Moshe.
I have a question on this mitzvah. So, what would one do in the case where someone asks you for a sum of money that is just obviously so ridiculous?
So you don't. It's ridiculous. You don't do ridiculous things. You do what's in your ability. I have an extra 2,000 shekels to the end of the month. I'm not going to be in overdraft. Someone comes to my door. I know him very well. Look, I need 1,000 shekels. Can you lend me money? B'simcha. with happiness.
Let's say I have 10 million shekels that I have that I could hypothetically lend to someone.
So you can open up a fund.
And,
It's called a gemach, gemilut chesed fund. Yes.
And someone comes to me and says, "Can I borrow all 10 million shekels from you?"
So you want to be careful. You're allowed to be careful, and don't put all your
eggs in one basket.
That's right. Gentlemen, what I wanted to get to the last pasuk of this chapter. Do you find it? Pasuk Lamed. V'anshe kodesh tiyunli. Do you see that, gentlemen? Do you see it? V'anshe kodesh. I want you to be men of holiness. Tiyunli, for me. And then it says, uvasar basareh treifa. Let's say you find an animal that was torn apart, taref, treifa, lo tochelo, lakelev tashlichon oto. When you read this pasuk, you would divide it into how many parts? How many ideas?
3.
3 parts. What are they that you see 3?
One is to be Kodesh. Second is to be more not being wild. And
Not being what?
wild.
Where does it say that? Don't be wild.
Because it says to eat some flesh which is already.
Doesn't say to eat it. It says don't eat it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Don't eat it. So it's don't be a wild person or don't be like a wild animal.
You're making an interpretation, but it says don't eat a treifa, an animal which was torn apart. And then it says the third part you're saying you can give it to the kelev. Okay? You can give it to a kelev. You can feed. You have a dog. You can benefit from a treifa. The prohibition of eating, what is a treifa? An animal that was torn apart, or an animal that has an ailment that will not allow it to live for 12 months. That's called a treifa as well. You can feed your animal. You can take benefit. What could be an obvious question here inside this pasuk? An obvious question here inside this pasuk. We're dealing with dietary laws, are we not?
Yes.
So what would you say is a classic question to be asked here?
Why is a dietary law present when we're talking about laws about behavior from man to man?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Because one may sell this flesh or this meat to a stranger.
You're allowed to sell it to a stranger.
No,
You're allowed to make money on it, so give it to your dog. But the question, the classic question, I want to repeat the question that Moshe raised. Is there a connection between Anshe Kodesh, to be men of holiness, and not eating, according to the dietary law, a treifa? It seems to be an unusual connection inside the pasuk. That is a classic question. What is it doing together with one another? You wanted to further the question?
Well, I wanted to answer your question if possible.
It's your question.
Okay, so and I'll answer my own question. It's saying this because you can although you can benefit from treif meat, you cannot personally consume it, and because of that, you if you were to sell it hypothetically to another Jew, you must let him know that it's not kosher to eat.
So you wouldn't sell it to another Jew. You would sell it to Mustafa Meats Incorporated, right?
You would sell it to a Jew saying, "You do not eat this. This would only be for your dog."
So what? Okay.
That's what I meant.
Gentlemen, a lot of people come and approach the Jewish people, both from inside and outside. And when they do their tshuva process, they often adhere to, as one of their first stages, the dietary laws, a kosher kitchen, this and that. And many people think, mistakenly, I know why the people of the Jewish people are eating kosher, because it's healthy. Okay, it's healthy. And you examine the Chumash and like, where does it say that it's healthy? And that's the laws of dietary laws. Gentlemen, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch in his commentary explains, here we're now meeting the first dietary law since Sinai. And it's going to refute theories or contemporary theories that, you know why we don't eat a treifa, we don't eat a nevela, because for our bodily health. Comes the Torah and says, has nothing to do with your bodily health. And what does the Torah say at the beginning of the pasuk regarding this dietary law? V'anshe kodesh. We have spiritual health. We have matters of holiness, purity, staying away from certain things. Staying away from certain things. So we don't know unless God tells us that this is a health matter. We don't know. It could be yes, it could be not, but there's no proof of it. For that, the Torah tells us at the intro to this pasuk, be men of kodesh. Don't eat a treifa. It's for your spiritual health. It's to uplift you. Kodesh, meaning we do not allow ourselves to indulge in anything and in everything. There's a unique way to manage our life. That's where Kodesh is. Both to the Jewish person, to the land, to the way of life. We act with Kedusha. Something is special. Something is unique. This way of life, this culture. And the truth is, I think also said the name of Rabbi of Kotsk. I'm not to say a Hasidic tale. Be Anshe Kodesh. Don't think that to be holy is to be up there, separate from society, separate from the world. Anshe Kodesh. I want you to be men of holiness. I don't want you to be an angel. I don't want you to be a pilot up in the air, an astronaut. I want you to be with your feet in the ground, but with your mind ready for the most basic thing. The most basic thing in Judaism is Kedusha. First and foremost, if we don't understand that He's holy and He made our nation unique and special and holy, that's it. Torah doesn't start off with eating kosher. Doesn't start off with going to the synagogue. Torah starts off with understanding and our belief that we have holiness. We're an Am Skula, we're a treasured, holy nation. We were made differently, cannot be seen in a microscope. But there is a spiritual DNA that makes us unique, that gives us the ability to live a life of spirituality on this world, but to be men of Kedusha. Men, I'm going to eat and I'm going to drink and I'm going to create a family and I'm going to indulge in things that's permitted to indulge in everything in its proper portion. Like the Torah says in Vayikra 19, quote, Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. And what does Ramban Nachmanides say in that pasuk to be holy? Quote, Kadesh et atzmecha. Help me out with my Hebrew, please. What is Kadesh et atzmecha? Sanctify yourself. Bamutar lecha. Sanctify yourself with what is permitted. Meaning, yes, indulge, but everything bimidah. Everything in moderation, in a measure. So I want you to be Anshe Kodesh, being men of Kedusha. And the reason for each and every mitzvah is because of God's Kedusha that He's putting into the nation of Israel. And that's why we don't eat a treifa, because He commanded us. He said, it's not, you have to build your spiritual level by not doing this and doing this and doing that and not doing that. That's how we're relating to Kedusha. It's not because of bodily health or the lack of health. Yes, sir.
All the mitzvot connected to dietary laws are kuchim.
Yes, we can say that they're chukim. They are a chok, statutes that we don't have the reason stated for us. They're chukim, they're statutes, we don't have the reason for us. So my dear friends, we're dealing with the nefesh, the soul. And the soul can be impacted spiritually by polluting it with physical violations like eating these things as well. So we're not talking here necessarily about poor nutrition in our body, but rather we're talking about spiritual nutrition. This is pollution. This will close our nefesh. This will add stains to our soul. This will put a glare on the light of Hashem that He is bringing to us. In order to be attached to God, the Ramban says, we have to go according to the laws of God's Kedusha, and we can't pollute ourselves even physically by eating these things. And therefore, we'll learn later in the book of Vayikra that all these detested creatures that are polluting ourselves are prohibited in eating, and it's going to take us away from Kedusha. It's not because it's tasty. I could even say, wow, I wish I could even eat a ham sandwich. It'd probably be so tasty. However, God commanded me not to eat it. And therefore, I stay away as much as possible. Questions? Yes, Asher?
If I'm not wrong, eating non-kosher food is correct, right?
No, it doesn't say that here. Doesn't say that here. Doesn't, yes?
It's very connected with what we learned yesterday.
Of?
Before what we learned yesterday. Before we accept the Shamayim, the Mitzvoth, and then we are with the Kedusha.
Right. In the Kedusha is related both to our faith in God and to our actions of what we do and what we do not do. The more we study and aware, and the more we practice, the more we're bringing Kedusha into our inner being, allowing the nefesh to be impressed with the Kedusha, and as a result, to be enlightened to Hashem. Okay, we're going to stop here, gentlemen. Have a great day. Shalom, shalom.